What do the biggest names in draft media think the Bears should do with the number one pick? We break that down and why Halas Hall has been quiet today, next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube. We will be going live at 7:30 on YouTube, so make sure to tune in, share some of your opinions. We're going to be breaking down coaching candidates unless bigger news ends up happening tomorrow. Also, make sure to rate 5 stars out there everywhere you get your podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts, because when we reach 58 5-star reviews, we will announce who wins the Darnell Wright jersey live on the show. How to enter, just rate 5 stars out there on Apple Podcast. But what's going on, everybody? We have loaded show today to just kind of give a little bit of an update because Halas Hall was quiet. Now, we said it yesterday. We broke it down that supposedly from Courtney Cronin, kind of this 24 to 48 hour window, and what she really felt was Wednesday was going to be the day that something ends up happening. She said it kind of felt that way. But why was it quiet today, and what was going on behind the scenes? Because we do have a peek behind the curtain from Patrick Finley. Patrick Finley mentioned that supposedly today, and it really does feel like today, this is what happened today, was Matt Eberflus sat down with Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and gave his plan for the quarterback and offensive coordinator. So are we keeping Fields? Are we moving off of Fields? What would he want to do as the head coach? So kind of pleading his case to say, this is why I should stay. Now, that means that leadership, that means that Ryan Poles would then sit back and say, now what do we do? And that's why Wednesday is such a big day. That's why tomorrow is huge. Because of this, they will analyze what he said and do they think that that is the best plan moving forward. Now, I will say something about this too, that it's a little different than what Ryan Pace back in the day and Matt Nagy had, where when they went 8-8 back in the day, the second time they went 8-8, they both had to go up to management and ownership and say and plead their case. So it kind of shows some where Matt Eberflus is the one that has to plead his case, kind of where they're at, especially with Ryan Poles. So it really does seem that it's ultimately going to be the next couple of days. We'll figure something out. But that's why it was quiet, because nobody was really in the building. Lockers were already cleaned out, and it was really just all this stuff kind of going on behind closed doors. But also, just before we get into the draft piece, the big coaching news, I guess you could say, quote unquote, wasn't really news. It was just more speculation, was Jim Harbaugh. That was coming up as, what if the Bears got Harbaugh because he won the national championship? He probably wants to go back to the NFL. Is the Bears the spot? Let me know. Do you guys want Jim Harbaugh? Tomorrow we'll definitely talk about it with the coaching staff live on the show, just who might be the coaches that we want and end up securing. But I think ultimately Harbaugh would be a slam dunk hire, kind of a no-brainer hire. He's very, very good everywhere he goes. And I think too, and I'll break it down tomorrow, but I think that he gives you an easy option at quarterback, which I'll talk about tomorrow. But let's go into the draft coverage, shall we? Let's talk about what Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper Jr., arguably the two biggest names in draft media coverage, had to say about what the Bears should do with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been saying this throughout the process. I feel like this decision, while it's going to be difficult in the environment in Chicago because of the pressure and the popularity of Justin, around a new quarterback, reset that clock, that's the smart thing to do.
So you heard it from Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network. To him, it's a no-brainer. You go with Caleb Williams. And the big reason, and I've heard people talk about this, where it does reset that clock of the quarterback. And a lot of people, too, say you wouldn't really have a quarterback issue or a true quarterback issue unless you had that number 1 overall pick, right? Because now you have the ability to take Caleb Williams, the unanimous number 1 quarterback overall. So that's what Daniel Jeremiah's opinion was. Let's go over to Mel Kiper Jr., the godfather of the NFL draft, and see what he has to say about the Bears.
Caleb. I'm back to Caleb Williams today, real time, because of this. People say, well, you stay with the known over the unknown, the known being Justin Fields. But they're all unknowns. Justin Fields is an unknown whether he can be a franchise quarterback. Caleb Williams, this year, if you say, well, he struggled. Well, yeah, from the Arizona game on, he wasn't phenomenal. But, hey, this kid doesn't throw interceptions. He had a higher completion percentage this year than he did last year when he was off the charts great. 93 touchdowns he was responsible for the last 2 years, includes 21 rushing touchdowns, 10 interceptions. To me, that's a chance for a grand slam, home run at the worst, maybe triple, as opposed to maybe a double for Justin Fields, who I had as the second highest rated quarterback when he came out behind Trevor. So I like Justin Fields, but if you can get the 8th pick from Atlanta in a trade and draft Caleb Williams, then I think you're setting yourself up very well for the future. So as we speak right now, if I'm the Bears, I'm taking Caleb Williams #1 overall.
So you heard it there, Caleb Williams #1 overall, and we're going to get back to what he said also about trading Justin Fields for the #8 overall pick, right? Mel Kiper, he's Mel, right? He's Mel, and he'll say things, and we'll break that down later because I kind of want to talk about what would happen if the Bears actually could get that #8 pick overall. I highly doubt it, but I want to just think about that. So we'll break that down, but you kind of hear it from all these experts, right? Or so-called experts. With the way Twitter and more draft experts are out there, the more I don't really believe in what Mel Kiper's top prospect is. But it's not just Mel's, it's everybody else's. And if you look at it, Caleb Williams actually consensusly is the #2 prospect. #1 prospect, Marvin Harrison Jr., according to the consensus big board. But Caleb Williams obviously is the #1 consensus quarterback prospect. And when you hear all these experts, right, talk about why to draft Caleb Williams, they break it down and say that he is the next great thing. He looks like Patrick Mahomes. He has the arm talent. He can throw it like I've never seen a quarterback kind of like do that hip throw as well as Aaron Rodgers, except for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams can just flick it 50 yards right to a player. But the big question mark, and this is just from me watching his tape, is that there's a lot of out of rhythm throws where he's kind of creating for himself. Now, it doesn't mean that he never has played in rhythm. He was in the Lincoln Riley offense. Of course he was in rhythm. So to me, there's a lot of easy plays for him. But it's really that arm that is just special. And when I watched his 2022 film, to me, I was like, okay, that's a no-brainer. First pick overall. Just take him right now because it was glorious. It was absolutely glorious film. 2023 was a bit worse, but still was very good tape. Now, the biggest concerns also besides that is that he has a lot of the same traits of Justin Fields, where he does arguably hold on to the ball a little bit too long. He arguably is looking for the big play. And that's why, to me, he does remind me of an Aaron Rodgers. Like when he's in the pocket, he's always looking downfield, similar to Patrick Mahomes. But when he's outside of that with all the other pieces, he does remind me of Rodgers, the way that he can flick it 50 yards, but also it's just that kind of next level smartness, but also always looking for the next play. And early on in Rodgers' career, that was a detriment. He wasn't taking the easy stuff, the simple first read. But yeah, when you describe that, it's a lot of the same problems that Justin has as well. And that's where the real argument does essentially come into play among Bears fans of who they ultimately want. But let me know down below in the comments. Are you a Caleb Williams supporter? Are you a Justin Fields supporter? Let me know. But let's talk about the fun piece. The Justin Fields trade that Mel Kiper said, the #8 overall pick. Now, I don't want to just laugh at it and dismiss Mel like crazy because he was clearly on a heater and he said #8 overall pick. But also, I think it was Rex Ryan that said if he was the Patriots, he would trade for Justin Fields because what he's seen with Justin Fields and what Justin Fields could become. So if people are that high, right? Because we talked about this too. There's reports that the second pick or a second round pick is probably what you would get for Justin Fields. So let's say though that there is some hype, right? I would love it because first off, if you can get the 8th overall pick for Justin Fields, do it. Like, do it. You can move on with Caleb Williams, and then you get the 8th overall pick. So I just wanted to throw something together real quick, right? These aren't official mock drafts. I just threw these together. What would happen if the Bears did actually get the 8th overall pick? What would that look like in a draft format? So I just went on to PFF because that allows you to force a trade. So I just basically forced Justin Fields for the 8th overall pick. And I kind of did 2 different ways. So the first one was, all right, I'm just going to select someone and not trade back at all. And just what could you get with that? So if the Bears were to actually end up with the 8th overall pick and the 9th overall pick because of the Justin Fields trade, obviously you'd go Caleb Williams number 1 because you need a quarterback. But then also you might be able to get Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia, who is seen as arguably one of the best tight end prospects we've seen since Kyle Pitts. But he can block and he can catch. He can do it all. And he can play in the slot, right? We don't need a tight end, but you play a lot of 2 tight end sets and he can play in the slot a lot. So Brock Bowers and then Rome Odunze, who has quickly become a fan favorite amongst Chicago Bears fans with the 9th overall pick. Big-bodied, he's got the speed, and he's really a big possession receiver. Where I don't necessarily love him is after the catch. I don't really see him. I think he's only broke 3 tackles statistically last year, but even the tape, you don't really see it too much, but he's just big body. He reminds me of Mike Evans. Like he's a very talented guy. But later on in the 3rd round, because the Bears don't have a second, I ended up going Brendan Rice, wide receiver out of USC, just to pair Caleb Williams with his old pal and just kind of saying, listen, just give him weapons, right? But on the other half, I just wanted to trade back to see what that would look like, and I wanted to switch things up, just assuming that there was no wide receivers available. That what if Rome Odunze and Brock Bowers were both gone? So what I did with the second one is basically obviously we had the 8th pick overall, and I just traded that. I traded that back to the Minnesota Vikings for pick number 11 and a 2nd round pick. And then I actually traded that farther back with Nate Davis in a package deal for the Buccaneers 20th overall pick, another 2nd and another 3rd. Because what I did with the 9th pick was I drafted an offensive lineman. And if you draft an offensive lineman, to me, you then need to move on from Nate Davis. And then one of your tackles, whether the one you drafted or Braxton Jones, right, moves to the interior. So with this, I went Olu Fashanu. So obviously Caleb Williams, Olu Fashanu, and then later on walked away with Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. Very good deep ball, big receiver. Emeka Egbuka, out of Ohio State, phenomenal slot receiver, excellent speed. So you're really kind of solidifying that wide receiver core. Chop Robinson, PFF doesn't like him really anymore. Edge out of Penn State, drop into the 2nd round. Just adding some more defensive end help. Adding Brendan Rice again, just to add more wide receivers. And Zach Frazier, center out of West Virginia. Just a very solid center, adding some depth. So, like I said, not official mock drafts out there, but I'm curious if you're watching below, which one would you rather have? But I just wanted to have fun with it. Man, if the Bears could get the 8th overall pick, geez, make the deal. I would hand deliver. I would drive down, I would drive to Chicago and drive him to Atlanta and be like, all right, deal is done. We're good, right? Because that would be unbelievable. Do I think it's going to happen? No, and I would love to be proved wrong. But thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for sticking with me all throughout this offseason. But make sure to like and subscribe out there. And like I said, we'll be going live tomorrow at 7:30 on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe. Make sure to turn on that bell for notifications. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a